Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm doing a video that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and that is where I rank the discography of an artist. It's a pretty basic concept, but I've been wanting to throw my hat into the ring for a while now, just because, yeah, it seems like a fun video to make. So, yeah, today I'll be ranking the discography of my current favorite artist of all time, Mr. Kendrick Lamar. So, for those of you who don't know, I feel like I've said it a fair bit on the channel. My favorite artist of all time is indeed Kendrick Lamar. I've got Good Kid, Mad City up here, and then I've got T-Pab up here. You can't see it, but it's up there. You can see, like, the gray right there. That's T-Pab up there. Yeah, I also just recently got every single album he's released on vinyl, and that's not every single album, because there's a couple that aren't. Actually, no, I'm missing one, and I'll talk about that later. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Yeah, Kendrick is my favorite artist of all time. You might have thought I was talking about Tyler from the shirt, but I'm just wearing the Tyler shirt because he's the GOAT. So is Kendrick. I've got a lot of GOATs, guys. Yeah. And I'm only going to be talking about the streaming releases. So I'm not going to be talking about his, like, early, like, mixtapes. I haven't listened to those because I just haven't. I don't feel like getting access to them. I could do a video where I go back and listen to them, and just, analyze them. But as of right now, I don't really have a desire to, so I'm just ranking his purely streaming discography. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So in the 7th place, I feel like everyone who listens to Kendrick could see this coming. It's overly dedicated. This album didn't release on vinyl, so I don't have it on vinyl. I mean, there's bootlegs of it, but I don't have it. But yeah, this album, mixtape, is it's pretty good. But we're talking about the discography of one of, if not the greatest artists to ever do music. And definitely one of the greatest artists of our generation. Pretty good's not going to cut it. This album, I feel like it falls victim to just being decently generic. Like, there's some good songs on here, but it's just, like, in terms of an album that's creative and adventurous and pushes the boundaries of music, it's not that. It's just a fun time. And there's some Kendrick songs on here that I really like. Like, I really like Michael Jordan. That's a banger. I know it's, like, hailed as, like, the worst song off here, but it's a banger, and don't let anyone else tell you otherwise. Barbed Wires is really good, and, like, there we get to see, like, the beginnings of, like, Kendrick's storytelling chops, but it's not fully fleshed out, and there is some definite, like, Wayne influence on here that he hasn't fully shaken, and, like, he hasn't grown into his own artist like he did on his later albums. But overall, it's a good album. A good mixtape. There's one skip on here. I don't love Average Joe. It kind of lives up to the name of just being average. Yeah, there are also some poppy songs that I'm, like, fine on. But yeah, it's just, like, in terms of the discography of Kendrick, it's just a little generic, and that's really my only complaint with it. Other than that, it's a lot of fun, and I recommend listening to it. I like it a lot. It's just that in terms of the discography of my favorite artists of all time, it doesn't quite stand up to the competition, which is steep. Next up is Untitled Unmastered, and some of you who are music nerds might be a little shocked at this low of a placement of this, because usually, honestly, for some reason, this gets put really high, but I'm going to put it down here just because, yeah, it doesn't have nearly as many songs that have stuck with me as his other albums. like even Section 80 has like a fair amount of tracks that have like stuck with me and become some of my favorite Kendrick songs. This one, I mean, On Purpose is also very unfinished. Like, Untitled 07 would be one of my favorite songs if it weren't for that end part. And then the end part just kind of comes in and it's like, oh, we're doing this now. It's kind of a mess, but in like a good way. Untitled 04 is also just kind of an interlude, which on such a short album is like, it's kind of annoying. Well, it's a mixtape. And yeah, just creatively, it's, again, not as adventurous as his other albums because it is just cuts from early, like, ideas of To Pimp a Butterfly. And don't get me wrong, this, like, mixtape is also really good. Like, it's really high quality. Untitled 02 is really good, and despite my criticisms, Untitled 07 is really good. Like, the last part is kind of annoying, but also it's kind of good. It depends on the mood I'm in. 08 is really good. And so is 03's really good. 06 is really good. Untitled 04 is really the only one that I'm kind of iffy on, but that one also has like a really cool like synth thing at the end. That's like it's really good. It's just that like if we go track for track, this album hasn't had nearly as many songs that have like stuck with me and become favorites of mine from his catalog than other albums. And yeah, I feel like it being kind of like T-Pab cuts also like just sets it up for being worse because the songs on T-Pab are so good. So getting a worse version of them is like, it's not ideal. Now we're getting into like his ambitious albums, his truly like where he locked in creatively. And not to say that he wasn't trying on the last two, but these are ones where he was like creating a piece of art. Not like, oh, these songs are too good to not release, or oh, or it like doing mixtape stuff. But yeah, down here, I'm gonna piss someone I know off, but it's Section 80. Now, Section 80's down here, just like, it's a great album. It's a really good album, but one, he still has a little bit of the Wayne influence. He's starting to grow into his own artist, but he's still like kind of Wayne influenced, and he's still, you know, not really fully his own artist on this album. And also, I feel like there are a couple of like tracks that are like kind of dull points, not necessarily low points, but like Cushing Corinthians isn't really like a Kendrick song that I'm returning to a lot of the time. It's good, but it's not like put on that Cushing Corinthians, you know? And I do enjoy the story of the album, but I also feel like this album tells it better. Like this one's better, in my opinion. If you just go track for track, this album to me is better. So that also kind of influences it, and this one's definitely more adventurous, for sure. For sure. And yeah, just in terms of like how strongly executed the concept is, I feel like this could be like the weakest of his albums, because when I'm like listening to Kendrick's like heavily conceptual albums, I'm like, often they like take me into like a story, and this one doesn't really do that. Like there's certain moments where I'm there, but I feel like it's less so than like Good Kid, Mad City, or even T-Pab, despite T-Pab juggling so many themes. Yeah. But the main issue with this one, as I said, is just that like there are some just like weaker tracks on here that I don't go back to as often. Next up is the first one I have on vinyl. I might get flamed for this, but it's GNX. The West Coast album. Yeah, this was my third favorite album of the year. of last year, and you guys are probably shocked. You're like, what? You loved GNX so much. But we're talking about the discography of one of the greatest artists of our generation. This album is really good and has some generational bangers on it. But compared to my top 4 albums, it's just not as good. And that's simply because the song GNX creates a noticeable dip in the quality of the track list. That's literally it. I mean, I could also talk about how it's not as thematically interesting, which for me, like, is what makes something true. Like, that's what makes Kendrick's albums truly great. Like a Good Kid, Mad City or T-Pab is because he's juggling so, like, he's exploring, like, these themes very deeply and, like, very interestingly. And yeah, that's what makes these albums really interesting. Like, doing that dissection, doing that, like, oh, on this song he's talking about this, and this is how it, like, plays into the overall narrative. It's fun for me. Hence why I'm a Kendrick fan. But yeah, GNX just doesn't provide that. Not that that's a bad thing, because what it lacks in that, it makes up for in bangers. Yeah, but the only real problem is that the song GNX makes a noticeable dip in the quality of the track list. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, this album's great. Yeah. I also don't love the vinyl packaging of it, but we'll talk about that later. Or maybe not. My 4th place slot, we're getting into top 4 here, is this one. Yeah. This album, I feel like, this album is highly conceptually interesting. Probably one of his most conceptually interesting projects, if not his most. Because it's exploring the, like, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. It's exploring, like, his conflicting human nature of, like, do I want to be a better person? Like, or do I want to just keep being the same me? And it's, like, I feel like this pairs well with Mr. Morale because it's, like, this is acknowledging that he has to change. Like, that's what Damn is. It's acknowledging that he has to change, and then Mr. Morale is the physical change. Like, that's the action put behind the words. And yeah, so yeah, and the fact that you can play it forward and backward and it still makes like an actual, like, connected story that makes sense is incredibly, like, that takes some incredible writing. And it does have some really great songs on it, like, that are some of my favorite Kendrick songs, like XXX. That's the beat switch on that is probably the best beat switch of all time. Pride, love that song. Even the heavily played songs on here, like Love is such a great pop rap song. Humble's a banger. DNA's a banger. It's just, like, it's so good. It's such a tight album from him as well. I just think that it's one of his least sonically adventurous. Like T-Pab's very sonically adventurous. This incorporates some elements of, like, funk and, like, you know, other, like, jazz and, like, some other stuff. And then Mr. Morale has some of those elements too. Like, there's some, like, pianos in there and violins and strings. Like, it's, yeah. And there's, like, the tap dancing. Like, Mr. Morale certainly isn't, like, meant to sound commercial. And this one's just a trap album to a degree. So that's kind of why it's down here. Just because it's not as adventurous as the top 3. Which you have figured out what they are, but you don't necessarily know which order they go in, so stay tuned. My third place is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. The emotionally charged writing on this album is something else. It's one of Kendrick's best concepts, and I feel like this album does a good job of like straying away from like the stereotypical like rap, like kind of the stereotypical rap song thing where it's like, oh, guns and drugs. This album is, yeah, it definitely strays away from that. And like I said before, it's the action behind the words of Damn. And I feel like that's, I don't know, it just connects with me on like a in a good way, in a way where I like it a lot. It's hard to explain, but that's just how art works sometimes. It has some of my all-time favorite Kendrick songs. Count Me Out is one of his best songs. That song is like so uplifting and so good, but it also bangs. Rich Spirit as well goes so hard. Worldwide Steppers is like such an interesting concept for a song. United in Grief is great. And also that like little intro he has on like I think it's the beginning, middle, and end of the album. We may not know which way to go on this dark road. I'm singing it poorly, but you know what I mean if you listen to the album. That's so fire. We Cry Together as well is such a good concept for a song. It's like, I feel like no rap album like this, aside from like Chromacopia, and Chromacopia is not even like to the degree that this is, has ever done this. Like, it hasn't like delved this deep into like self-reflection. And I feel like it prompts the listener to do the same. And I feel like that's just like a true, that's just like a truly great piece of art if it can do that. This is a great album. Next up, I'm gonna piss some people off again. This is my number 2. And I mean, the reason for this being number 2 is just because I like this one more. It's not really anything deep. This has some of my all-time favorite Kendrick songs. Wesley's Theory is my favorite Kendrick song of all time. And I feel like this is his most sonically adventurous. And the themes he's juggling on this and the way he's able to express like a clear idea throughout the album whilst juggling so many themes is undeniably impressive. Yeah. And despite like, yeah, it's just like, I'm looking at this track list and I'm like, nah, there's no wasted room here. Everything on here hits. Like, everything on here is genuinely amazing. Like, yeah. I just think that, the amount of themes he's juggling on this make it a little harder to digest than Good Kid, Mad City. And I'm not saying that as a problem with the album. That's just more of like a for me thing. Like, because this is a favorite list. This isn't a best list. This is a favorite list. I think, but yeah. This album is just incredible. If you haven't listened to it, which you probably have if you're watching my channel, listen to it. It's the highest rated album on Rate Your Music and Album of the Year for a reason. It's a 10 out of 10 from me for a reason. Yeah, but it's just an incredible album. The like jazzy like production is so good and so smooth and creates for like such interesting bangers. And yeah, it's just like such a interesting, vibrant, lush sonic soundscape. And yeah, I don't know. his like story. I feel like this also has some of his best storytelling tracks, like How Much a Dollar Costs and Institutionalized. Those are such good storytelling tracks. The Blacker the Berry as well is a great storytelling track. Same with These Walls, and You is some great storytelling. I don't know. He's a storyteller, and on this album, he showed that. This was like his like. This was him showing like that he's here to be the greatest, and yeah, it's a great album. Now you've probably figured out my favorite album of his, Good Kid, Mad City. Yeah, that one, it's just my favorite. That was the first record of his that I listened to. And I feel, when I look at the track list, I'm just like, there's no low points here. Like, there's literally no low points. You could point to Real, but I love that song. That song's a groove. That song, like, the hook on that song is so good, and, like, the flow uses, like, looking at you and I know you very well, your eyes never lie, even if they tell. Like, that's such a fun flow. It's infectious. You could point to Poetic Justice with Drake, and you might, but Drake kind of spits on that song. So, it's just such a good album. Like, there's no wasted room. And the deluxe of it, which I have, introduces more good songs. It's not like a bloated deluxe. It's a great deluxe. The Recipe's one of his best songs. Now or Never's an incredible, like, flashy, like, soul R&B rap song that's like, oh, it's so good. And then Black Boy Fly is kind of, it's okay. Black Boy Fly is okay, but that's on the deluxe, which I'm not counting. But it's still good, because, I mean, I feel like that's kind of like, that one's like a very well written. I just don't really love how it sounds. But in terms of writing, Black Boy Fly's incredible, because just like the way he talks about that is really interesting. But yeah, it also contains his best, like one of his best bangers of all time, Mad City, and one of his best probably his best storytelling track of all time, Sing About Me, I'm Dying of Thirst. And just, it has such, like, how he packs in such great songs into this, like, hour and 10-minute long album. I don't know how he does it. Like, there's literally no wasted room on this album. Like, if I look at T-Pad, there might be somewhere I'm like, oh, that one's like a little worse. Like, but this one I'm just like, no, there's like nothing here that's a dip in quality. And yeah, this is also where you start to see Kendrick, like, grow into his own artist. And it truly is. Like, people will say this album's like a movie. It even has a short film by Kendrick Lamar on the title. And it really is. Like, if you listen to The Art of Peer Pressure, like, you can, like, visually see, like, what he's describing. Similar thing with Sing About Me. Like, the first half, I'm, like, seeing the people, like, write these letters to Kendrick. And, like, I'm seeing the events they're describing unfold. And also, like, with Shireen, I'm, like, seeing him drive over to her house. It's just an incredible album. Like, a true storytelling feat. And that's why it's my favorite Kendrick album. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on those notifications to get notified when I upload a video. And if you disagreed with me, drop your ranking down below. Honestly, I'm not really gonna get, like, defensive about this list. I love all of his albums, and I can see, like, legitimately any one of them being at number 1. So yeah, just drop your list below. This is, and if you're pissed about this, holy voice crack, if you're pissed about this, just remember that this is a favorites list, not a best list. So, yeah, This is based pretty much entirely off of how much I enjoy each album. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Comment what artist discography you want me to rate next. Yeah, I'm probably gonna do Eminem next, but that could change if you guys comment unanimously another artist. So, bye.